Plenty going on even over the weekend. You got to say the president certainly does work every day.
The Dan York State of Mind program is brought to you in part by Lookout Rhode Island and Takeo Comfort Solutions.
Can't deny that he's working every day. Can't deny that. And he made a good NSA pick if you believe all those folks who are bullish on it. And even though those who think that Donald Trump is completely off the rails took a deep sigh of relief this morning on that choice. We'll evaluate that with our guest, another expert on, and thankfully we've got plenty around here. Senior fellows at the Watson Institute and plenty of folks from the Naval War College. And, we have resources here to kind of break down what's happening in Washington, and we have another great guest for you tonight. Great to have you aboard. Thank you very much for tuning in to tonight. And let's go to the rundown and just kind of check on things here. The governor is just having a little bit of a challenge right now. Check this headline out. This happened on Friday. The governor went out to California to participate in this Girls Who Code conference. You don't know what Girls Who Code is? Well, it's a pretty good organization. It's designed to get little ones, females, your daughters, involved in technology. And it's a growing group, and they've got tens of thousands of members now, and it seems to me to be intrinsically very good. They had a big event in California, and the governor, because she's got that CS4RI, Computer Science for Rhode Island project, was all hepped up to go out and be one of the main speakers, which is terrific. The only problem is it's sponsored by Deloitte. Deloitte is in a little bit of a situation with our governor, as this next headline will indicate, and of course all last week's headlines told you, and that is that the UHIP program, the big monster computer program, $346 million dedicated to that so far, triple the original plan, has been spitting and burping and coughing all since its inception last September. Last week, we chronicled the governor's efforts to finally come clean on the entire thing and to put a lot of the blame on Deloitte. So one would ask the question, if you're in a negotiation with Deloitte, if you are not paying Deloitte, if you're threatening to sue Deloitte, why do you show up at an event sponsored by Deloitte? I'm not big on shoving optics at politicians. Sometimes you just got to do things because they're the right thing to do. But that doesn't feel right. And the governor has some explaining to do this week, it seems to me. I asked the question last week. I think we played it here and certainly on the radio on WPRO, weekdays 3 to 6. How do you threaten to sue somebody and work with them at the same time to solve a problem? It's nuanced. It's not helped by going to California to one of their sponsored events, at least when it comes to perception of the taxpayers. Anyway, more on that as we go this week. In the meantime, this is just the worst heartbreak in the world. It seems so simple, the headline here, and it's just enough to drop you to your knees and pray. Roll it.
It's an update we never want to have to give. The fire chief tells us Kristen Latour has died after being in the hospital since last week when her home filled with carbon monoxide. A mother of 3 in Smithfield, dead after this tragic case of carbon monoxide poisoning. The fire department has ruled that a faulty heating system caused the Latour family's home on Pleasant View Avenue to fill with the deadly gas last Wednesday evening.
The family was unconscious in the house.
Firefighters pulling 3 children and their mother out of the home,
All of which were either unconscious or semi-conscious.
The children, ages 7, 9, and 11, were treated at Hasbro Children's Hospital and are now recovering. But mom Kristen Latour died at Fatima Hospital 4 days after she was brought in. Fire officials tell us there were no working CO detectors or smoke detectors in the home. They were taken down and the batteries removed. It was Kristen Latour's husband who found his wife and kids unresponsive. He had been working in the garage and therefore not affected by the gas many call the silent killer. Fire officials urging everyone to get carbon monoxide detectors in the wake of all this. The community has been coming together for the family ever since last week when we talked to Elena Donahue.
Great kids, great family, fantastic people all around.
The GoFundMe page she set up has now raised more than $34,000 for the Latour family.
Please, 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 please get detectors. Please get detectors. Make sure they're checked. And, keep the window open a crack at night, even though it's chilly. We'll have more on this and get some expertise on this later in the week. because it definitely is a life issue. God bless her and that family. Keep them in your prayers and in your contributions. Alrighty. The president was busy this weekend and this morning as well. We'll take it one step at a time here. Here's the headline on the NSA choice. General McMaster seems to be everyone's sigh of relief. Let's roll.
President Trump spent Sunday at his so-called Winter White House interviewing several candidates to replace his ousted National Security Advisor Michael Flynn. Vice Admiral Robert Harward turned down the president's job offer last week, reportedly after a staffing dispute with the White House.
The new NSA director can do whatever that he or she wants to do with the staffing at the NSA.
But when you say the White House is running so smoothly.
Over the weekend, the president held a campaign rally in Florida for his 2020 re-election, during which he falsely suggested Sweden experienced a major terror attack as a result of taking in refugees.
You look at what's happening last night in Sweden. They're having problems like they never thought possible.
After major backlash, Mr. Trump sought to clarify the remark, tweeting the statement was, quote, in reference to a story that was broadcast on Fox News. Meanwhile, members of his own party raised concerns about the president's recent tweet calling the press the enemy of the American people.
That's how dictators get started. And I'm not saying that President Trump is trying to be a dictator. I'm just saying we need to learn the lessons of history.
Alrighty, so that was that. You know, Sweden, what? Of course, there was some turbulence afterwards. I'm sure Donald Trump would suggest that, you know, it was all part of what he knew. We'll talk about it with our guest here. In fact, he's written an interesting piece overall on security matters. The headline, Rethinking U.S. National Security. It's bound to grab everybody's attention. J. Brian Atwood is a senior fellow for international and global affairs at the Watson Institute. Professor, welcome.
Thank you very much,
Nice
Dan.
to have you.
Nice to be here.
Thank you for coming. Before I get into anything specific, gut check so far in the first month?
It's a dangerous time in any transition, but this seems to be more dangerous because of the lack of discipline, frankly, the president is showing. I mean, usually it's, people under him who are competing with one another, leaking things or whatever. In this case, it's the tweets, it's the very dangerous talk. I mean, he's saying things that are causing nations around the world to say, my goodness, are we still going to be able to depend on the United States?
Listen, I don't know when guys like you and me, because I'm with you, are going to get over this tweeting thing.
Yeah.
It seems to me that this is not going to change.
Right.
And so it seems that this whole, I mean, you want to rethink U.S. national security. I want to talk to you about some of your interesting thoughts.
Right.
We have to rethink the way we evaluate this president. We're going to have to put that in as a component of the way he's going to do business, because I don't see anybody influencing him any other way. Do you?
See, the problem is that he is taking little snippets of news from Fox or other stations. He's looking at things, one thing after the other, and then extrapolating from that and then sending out a tweet that has nothing to do with reality, as in the case of this Sweden thing. What he's got to do is surround himself with people that are feeding his brain with things that are right and giving him the right advice as to what. I think this McMaster thing is a great choice. I would point out that the Harward, the former vice admiral, was able to turn him down because he's no longer in active service, whereas McMaster is in active service. The commander-in-chief says this is the job you're going to have, then that's the job he has to take. But he's got a great reputation.
People don't know that. People are not following that aspect of this thing. There's a mandatory nature to this appointment, correct?
That's right. I'm not sure McMaster had a lot of choice in this. But I think he probably, after what happened with Howard, he does have his choice of people that will work with him. And I think the more good people around the president, the more likely it is that he'll find some discipline, and his tweets will at least be related to reality.
Well, from your lips to God's ears, it seems to me. But this Harward thing is kind of interesting in the sense that he was chosen. Then Donald Trump had his 75-minute press conference, which set the world on fire. And all of a sudden now it's a staffing issue. I wonder if Admiral Harward just kind of looked at that and said, I don't know, man. I don't know.
Frankly, I would. I mean, I've worked for 3 secretaries of state and 3 presidents, And I've always had the confidence that, you know, they were going to make me a better person. I think in this case, people would have real doubts about whether they can advance their career. I mean, we've had some other problems here in the National Security Council as well in the past, but nothing like this. So I wonder how long McMaster will last. I don't know. I mean, he's got two great adults in, I think, great. I mean, we'll see. Rex Tillerson is an adult, and Mattis, the Secretary of Defense, is an adult, but they don't seem to be involved in these meetings. Rex Tillerson wasn't in the meetings when the heads of state came to see him. They're not getting reports at the State Department. They seem to be pushing the State Department out of the way. Maybe they're upset about all of this dissent channel message that 1,000 Foreign Service officers sent. I'm not sure what is the reason, but I'll tell you, it's not serving them well. They need people who understand the diplomatic side as well as the military side.
You're definitely, and I want to talk about this in the next segment too. I want to talk about your article, but you definitely reek, and I say this respectfully, of establishment understanding about the way this whole thing is going to roll. And the big argument for Donald Trump is he's anti-establishment. Hold your thought. I just want to let you know before we get back to that Navigant Credit Union's got the new Card Valet program. This is an app where you can pay your bills, deposit checks, transfer money. There's so many notes, I'm cheating here. Set limits on your spending, use Apple or Samsung Pay, send and receive cash through texts, all with this app, and it even does a lot more. You ought to check it out. Go online at navigantcu.org. Check any one of the 15 branches of Navigant, federally insured by the NCUA, of course, Navigant Credit Union, and their brand new Card Valet. Be right back. Stay with us. Our guest has worked for, as he noted, 3 presidents, President Clinton, President Carter, and the third would be?
Well, I was for a while in the Reagan administration.
You were. So
I was a career person.
That helps you as not only an establishment bureaucrat, but a guy who knows the ropes. It also helps you, I'm sure, when you're making Trump arguments, at least you've worked for a Republican, right? Because because you end up getting painted as a Democrat, lefty type of thing. And that's,
understand that.
That's sometimes problematic. Here's the latest what's going on with Donald Trump.
President Trump toured the Smithsonian's National Museum of African American History and Culture and gave remarks about African American accomplishments.
I'm deeply proud that we now have a museum that honors the millions of African American men and women who built our national heritage.
He also denounced recent threats against several Jewish community centers around the country.
A very sad reminder of the work that still must be done to root out hate and prejudice and evil.
At the same time, the Department of Homeland Security unveiled sweeping new guidelines that could lead to more deportations and detentions of undocumented immigrants. Those guidelines include the immediate return of Mexican immigrants apprehended at the border, hiring 15,000 more agents to carry out immigration enforcement for ICE and the Border Patrol. Parents can be prosecuted for paying smugglers to bring their children across the border. President Obama's DACA program, which allows people brought to the U.S. as children to obtain work visas, will remain. The new DHS guidelines include a directive to shift money to begin the immediate design and construction of a wall along the Mexican border, something President Trump insists Mexico will pay for. Mexico says it will not pay for the wall, and President Enrique Peña Nieto will get a chance to reiterate that point tomorrow when he meets with Secretary of State Rex Tillerson and Homeland Security Secretary John Kelly.
Thoughts on this immigration aspect?
Well, I mean, I think it's important that we send the right kinds of messages to the rest of the world. I mean, we need allies in the Sunni Muslim community, and the first message that was sent was really all the wrong message in terms of our own security. So this is a security issue as much as anything. I think if we start deporting a lot of people in this country, which frankly under President Obama we deported more people than ever before. We're going to continue to do this. It's going to make it look like this is a police state. I think we need to be very careful about this.
Yeah, President Obama was actually able to take the level of deportations almost to a record pace without really drawing attention to it.
Yeah.
There was no marketing of it. It was just kind of a do.
Right.
And I think the press was probably either cooperative or complicit in really spending a lot of time on it. And he didn't seem to want any kind of signature on it. He just kind of did it. Donald Trump has been all rhetoric and less action.
Yeah.
versus the
Well,
rhetoric, at least on the southern border issue.
Well, the courts, I mean, have raised some constitutional issues about it, which have prevented him from moving ahead on some of this. And I mean, I think I mean, you've got to look at
Well, there's
each
two
case.
issues there, right? I mean, you're talking about
Yeah.
the
original executive
well,
order.
we've got a Latino Hispanic thing that is
Right,
part of this
right,
immigration thing, and then
right.
we've got the overseas refugee
Right,
security
right,
thing. Of course,
right.
the travel ban was more about overseas than
Right,
it was
right.
about the southern border. This is more southern
yeah.
border today.
Yeah.
But combined,
But it is a fact that there are fewer people coming across that border than ever before. There are more Mexican Americans or Mexicans going back to Mexico because the economy has been fairly good. It's about the 15th largest economy in the world. Why we would alienate Mexico for no good reason, because they're going to have an election next year. And what they're going to do possibly is elect an anti-American leftist as president. What good does that do? I mean, just for campaign rhetoric, just because people are cheering about this? This doesn't make any sense. The other thing that really upsets me is what he's doing in Europe, and it's the same policy that Putin has. Putin is basically trying to undermine the European Union, so the president says it's not important anymore. I don't care whether they stay together as a union. Well, that's basically been our security strategy forever since World War II. And we're going to undermine that. We're going to undermine NATO. I mean, he sends people over there to try to correct what he said, and it seems constant. I
well,
mean,
the man is, at least our new defense secretary has been an independent thinker on a couple of things. I mean, even this past weekend, he suggested that the media was not the enemy of America. Was pretty nonplussed about the assertion. Has been much more bullish on NATO than Donald Trump has been.
Yes.
And so I wonder, as you were asking in the last segment, whether these top guys are going to find themselves running a different race than Donald Trump in the White House.
It can't last. I mean, there's an old line that Dean Acheson used, which is there should be no light shining between yourself and the president. He was Secretary of State. They can't allow this kind of light to show between the president and themselves, which means, in my view, they've got to get into the White House on occasion to have meetings with him and to influence his behavior, frankly. And that's true of McMaster. He can play a very positive role there as well. I mean, I think the president he has not had a lot of experience in this. He can do deals, he's a transactional guy, but there's no winners and losers when you're trying to negotiate with foreign countries. They're proud countries, they're sovereign countries under the way the international system works. You can't say I'm going to go out there and win every time, because there has to be a compromise. China isn't going to allow the United States to win in a negotiation over trade, because they're proud too. They've got their own pride. They've got politics even internally in a communist country.
You're feeding Trump's beast with your discussion here. He believes people like you, and again I'm just playing his game here,
I understand.
Are weak. Who cares if China has pride? We need to beat them.
You've got to be tough, but you've got to be clever, and you've got to understand the other side. Have some empathy for what the other side. Roger Fisher wrote a book called Getting to Yes, and that's what you want to do. You have to have a good strategic objective that you want to accomplish in any negotiation, and you have to try to get there by being at least aware of what the other team's strategic objective is.
And then there's...
I mean, that's why the Patriots won the Super Bowl.
We'll put that together for you, and then we'll talk about the professor's thought here on rethinking national security in different ways. Stay with us. And there's Steve Bannon, who is, for a lot of those who understand national security and military issues, way too close to the security concept here, having been put on the NSC. And, although Reince Priebus this weekend on Fox News, I saw him on Sunday, suggested that it is the NSA director's call as to who sits on the NSC. So this will be very interesting. I hope that is the actual case. Is there a chance that we might have some kind of our own version, not necessarily the Middle Eastern version, but our own version of a military coup of some kind with this president if they cannot get themselves together?
You know, I think you'll get dissension, but I really respect the military of the United States, and they respect civilian control over the military. So I just think that's highly unlikely. But I do think you're going to get
We've got our own
a lot
version
more
of it,
dissension.
meaning, you know, somewhere along the line, the three of them, you know, at least walk in there and say, you know what, almost, what do you call it, when an intervention. You know, when the alcoholic in the family comes in and says, you know, sit down. I mean, at some juncture, do they charge the White House and say, look, you don't know what the hell you're doing, Mr. President, and we're going to start saying it out there if you don't start listening to us. I mean, something like that?
Came very close in the Nixon years. At the very end of his administration, they say he was drinking heavily. People like General Haig, who was at the National Security Council at the time, and Kissinger and others were very worried about the fact that he had his hand on the button, that he could use it. So they were meeting constantly and sending messages to Jim Schlesinger, who was then the Secretary of Defense, saying, if you get an order from the White House, please check with us first. I mean, that was about as dangerous as it ever was. But this one, I mean, I think I can see a possibility of people, I mean, again, you know, I want this guy to succeed up to a point.
For all of us.
I mean, for all of us. But there's an awful lot of talk in Washington about the 25th Amendment. It's not impeachment, but if 2/3 of both houses say he's incapacitated. And the only way that's going to happen is if Republicans continue to get really nervous about this.
Tell me about your other thought. I know that we only left a couple of minutes. We'll on foxprovidence.com, we will link this article for you so that you can read it. Rethinking U.S. National Security. You just wrote that. What's the quick cliff note on that?
The quick footnote is that we've had a concept of a 3D national security concept, which is diplomacy, defense, and development. And the development side is where I see the prevention happening. If we're investing in development, you will see issues not become as severe as they are, like all the refugees that are threatening Europe at this point. And we've got to invest in it. And every president has done that successfully. And the hope that this is a bipartisan article, another George Bush's administrator of AID, as I was under Clinton, and I wrote this article saying basically we need to strengthen the third D. The problem is, as I hear about the budget that's coming down, is that we're probably going to weaken the third D. And that doesn't make any sense in terms of environmental concerns, infectious disease concerns, concerns about instability in the developing world.
Because it feels too long-term as opposed to action-oriented.
That's right. I mean, that's the problem. It's a hard case to make. But you can see that investments we've made over the years have done a lot in terms of diseases and other issues that we face. We can't, it is America first. It will be under this administration. But when you consider America first, you've got to consider these things like Ebola and HIV/AIDS and all of the rest.
Well, it certainly grabs our attention when it comes up and panics everybody. Give it a read on foxprovidence.com. What a pleasure. Thank you for coming.
Thank you, Dan.
Well, final word. Important show tomorrow, too. Stay with us. Path of Expertise. It's the title of a new book by Professor Tom Nichols from the Naval War College. Tom's been here on a number of occasions. This time we'll talk about his book as it relates to the way everybody thinks about what's going on in this country, Donald Trump et al. So be tuned in for that tomorrow here on Dan York's State of Mind. We'll see you on the radio tomorrow at 2. What time do I start on the radio? 3, most days, until 6 on WPRL. Thanks for watching. Good night.